We're a little over a week out of the NFL draft at the time of this filming, and without question, things will change as far as the rankings of wide receivers, quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, you name it in fantasy football. And I understand that we're very far away still from an NFL season actually happening and from fantasy football being played. But the best part about right now, if you are drafting on Underdog, you can get extreme values on some great players that are definitely going to change in value, as I said, over the next several weeks. That could either be a good thing or a bad thing. But right now, we're going through the top 30 wide receiver rankings for 2024 fantasy football. And what I want to do is compare my rankings to where these guys are going in Underdog drafts right now. So let's go ahead and dive into it, starting out with our first tier, Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb here, 1 and 2. Now, Tyreek Hill is number 2 on Underdog. He's the wide receiver 2, and CeeDee Lamb's the wide receiver 1. Now, I don't really have much of a gripe. If you want to put CeeDee Lamb one spot over Tyreek, go ahead and do that. The reason I like Tyreek better is because if you just look at it from a most of season perspective last year, like both their numbers are on the screen right now, obviously both fantastic on a per game basis in fantasy football, but Tyreek Hill was more dominant. He had more big games than CeeDee Lamb did. Now, CeeDee Lamb could go nuclear as well. There's not much of a difference here between these two guys in fantasy. That's why they're both in tier 1 and why I ultimately don't have a problem if you want to put CeeDee Lamb in front of Tyreek Hill. But number 1 and 2 on Underdog, they're just flipped for me. And I got Tyreek at number 1 and CeeDee at number 2. Number 3 and 4, I've got Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. These guys, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 on Underdog as well. So I feel the exact same way as Underdog does in this particular range right here. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, I've been saying specifically with Jamar Chase, I believe this is going to be a massive year for Jamar. I think it'll probably be his best year in fantasy football since his rookie year in Cincinnati. I think him and Joe Burrow, this is really the first season that we're looking at where both of these guys will be healthy, hopefully for a full season, and we could get that top level production from Jamar Chase once again. Now, I think that Jamar Chase, you know, with T. Higgins there, doesn't really affect the way I think about Jamar Chase, to be honest with you. I'm a big Jamar Chase guy this year. I think him and Joe Burrow, healthy this year, will be elite. And Justin Jefferson, look, I know he's elite, and I don't have the same problem as a lot of people are having with him right now. I think a lot of people, what I've seen, are having problems, obviously, with the fact that Minnesota's quarterback 1 is Sam Darnold at this moment in time. How many people believe they're going to enter the season like that? We're already hearing that Minnesota is aggressively going to trade up in this draft. For J.J. McCarthy, possibly Drake May, if they can get their hands on him, they're going to get a quarterback in this class. And it's a strong quarterback class. So I like their chances of getting a legit starter year 1. My problem with this is, I've been saying this for over a month at this point. This Justin Jefferson thing is getting a little bit weird to me. Justin Jefferson is in a position where no contract right now, and not only is there no contract, I think, you know, if it wasn't for this stuff that I'm about to say, I would have confidence in them getting a deal done. He's talking about, you know, being jealous of Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and their relationship in Cincinnati since he was an LSU guy as well. Seems like he kind of wants out. I don't know. I don't know what to think here. Justin Jefferson's elite. I think he'll be elite in fantasy wherever he goes. That's why he's the number 4, but I, of course, want to put him higher. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Puka Nacua at 5 and 6 right here. Amon-Ra St. Brown, number 5 on Underdog. Puka at number 6 as well. So I feel the exact same way as Underdogs does here as well. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown just really proved who he is last year. Amon-Ra St. Brown, we're going to continue to get that elite level production because of everything still being intact. That 17 fantasy points per game last year that he got, expected again because Jared Goff is still there. Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, is still there. Offensive line intact. Why does that matter? Jared Goff needs time to throw because he's not mobile. Amon-Ra St. Brown, still the best weapon at the wide receiver position in this offense. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to continue to hog 9, 10, 11 targets per game in this Detroit offense. And that puts him just one spot above Puka Nacua for me. Because, listen, I could easily see Cooper Kupp, you know, getting healthy over the offseason and maybe taking a target or 2 away from Puka. But if we're questioning whether Cooper Kupp or Puka is the number 1 in Los Angeles, we shouldn't be questioning that. Puka is the wide receiver 1. I just think he's not quite as good in fantasy as Amon-Ra St. Brown, but they're in the same tier because I do believe it's pretty close. A.J. Brown at 7 and Garrett Wilson at 8. Again, it matches up with underdog. Wide receiver 7 and 8 are A.J. Brown and Garrett Wilson on underdog. A.J. Brown, I want to put him higher. I want to put him above Puka Nacua. In fact, I think if everything hits, he'd be better than Amon-Ra St. Brown personally, especially in a best ball league. But A.J. Brown, I just can't get past what I saw from him and the whole team, Jalen Hurts included, at the last half of last year. It was embarrassing, actually. It was an embarrassment how much they fell apart. Do I think that's going to be the story all year? Not necessarily. That's why he's at number 7. But I do think it's worth questioning here. And Garrett Wilson, I think we're all just banking on the breakout. We were banking on it last year. It obviously didn't come. But of course, Aaron Rodgers went down 3 plays in. Aaron Rodgers should come back, you know, at least 90%. And of course, he's in his 40s now. So who knows whether or not he'll be the same guy. I doubt he'll be the same guy. But anything is better than what he has dealt with. And by the way, what he has dealt with and the production he's given us over the 2 years in his career so far, unbelievably fantastic. 2 straight 1,000-yard seasons with Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, Trevor Siemian, you know, Tim Boyle, Mike White, just a garbage collection of quarterbacks playing for Garrett Wilson. I'm buying into the Garrett Wilson breakout this year. Brandon Ayuk at 9 and Davante Adams at 10. Now, this is where we're starting to get a little bit dicey here. This is exactly the point where I start to differentiate from underdog here. Brandon Ayuk is the wide receiver 12 on underdog, and Davante is the wide receiver 11. Brandon Ayuk, as of the time of this filming, has requested a trade from the 49ers. Do I believe it's going to happen? I'd say it's 50-50. This is not the NBA where players get traded because they just say they want out. The NFL doesn't work like that. So even though he requested a trade, it's a good chance he'll probably play for the 49ers again this year. I mean, this is a team that's Super Bowl hunting. It's like the Cincinnati Bengals with T. Higgins. They're Super Bowl hunting. They're not just going to sell off one of their top offensive playmakers just because he wants out. That's not good business because every other team is like, well, your player wants out. I'll just send you a 5th rounder. The 49ers aren't going to do that. Maybe they get a good deal on draft day and Brandon Ayuk goes. But if Brandon Ayuk is a 49er, that's what I'm planning on right now. Top 10 wide receiver is absolutely what I believe he'll be. And then Davante Adams, he's just steady. You know, and I hate their quarterback situation. Rumor is that they like Jaden Daniels, which I would love that for Davante Adams. But whether or not they get Jaden Daniels or they stick it out with Gardner Minshew this year, we'll have to see. But I do believe that Gardner Minshew has been able to support some pretty good wide receivers in fantasy football. And none of them have been as great as Davante is. Davante can make anybody work. He made it work with Jimmy G when he had to. He made it work with Aiden O'Connell when he had to. So I think that Davante is steady. I would say unexciting at this point in his career and with the quarterback situation, but definitely steady. Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs at 11 and 12 for me. Nico is the wide receiver 13 on underdog, and Stephon Diggs is the wide receiver 15. Obviously, our newest addition to the Houston Texans is Stephon Diggs, and that totally screws with things in fantasy football for these two guys. I believe they're both top 12 guys. This is an offense that is so much on the rise. Like, if they were a stock, they're up like this. The Houston Texans now have a superstar quarterback. CJ Stroud is elite. A 4,000, 5,000-yard season for him, absolutely on the horizon. Nico Collins is the big play guy. He's the big play guy. He's big, he's fast, he's athletic, and he built chemistry with CJ Stroud last year. That matters. Stephon Diggs, obviously the more experienced veteran. He's had more great seasons than Nico Collins has had. So Stephon Diggs will be a good safety blanket for Nico Collins. They're two different type of players, though. This is very much a Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill situation where Tyreek Hill is the elite number 1, but Jalen Waddle was the big play guy. Nico Collins, I could even see him being the number 1, but at the very least, this guy is going to be a big play threat. And that's going to open things up for Stephon Diggs, probably to be a PPR monster. And in underdog drafts right now, I would personally take Stephon Diggs because I do believe that he's a top 12 guy and he's being valued as a wide receiver 15. Mike Evans at 13 and Chris Olave at 14. Now, this is where I get some bigger disagreements with Underdog on this. Because Mike Evans is the wide receiver 19 off the board in Underdog drafts, and Chris Olave is the wide receiver 17 off the board in Underdog drafts. Mike Evans going at the wide receiver 19, I get it and I don't. I get it because it's like, yes, he's in his 30s now, and Baker Mayfield, like, that was his best season as a pro, without a doubt. So can he do it again? I would beg yes, because he fits Mike Evans' playing style. Mike Evans is a go deep type of guy. He wins at 50-50 balls, and Baker Mayfield throws a very good deep ball. That's one of his strengths in this league. He throws a very nice deep ball. So Mike Evans at the wide receiver 19, I would absolutely take advantage of this Underdog price right now because, again, you never know what's going to happen. So take advantage of it today using code FFN to get a 100% deposit match up to $100 when you draft Mike Evans. And Chris Olave, I think at wide receiver 17 on Underdog, I don't have a problem with the ranking. I mean, that's exactly where he's around finishing. But Olave is like, I would take him over guys like Drake London, who we haven't seen it from yet, right? I would take him over Marvin Harrison Jr. I just think there's more of a stable baseline there for Olave to work with. Whereas with London, whereas with Marvin Harrison Jr., we don't know it because we haven't seen it yet from either of those guys. So I'll take Olave at 14 here. Michael Pittman Jr. at 15, great value. And Drake London at 16. Michael Pittman Jr. is the wide receiver 21 on Underdog right now. And Drake London is the wide receiver 10. So we've got polar opposite ends of the spectrum here. I like Pittman's value. I've been kind of talking about this one all offseason already. Michael Pittman Jr. will be on a lot of my teams this year. I'm already about 8 drafts deep on Underdog at this point, and I have Michael Pittman in over half of the leagues I'm in. So Michael Pittman coming into his first year, officially signed long-term by the Indianapolis Colts, and he's got a rookie quarterback with the perfect head coach for him. Shane Steichen came from Philadelphia, where he made Jalen Hurts into a star, and he was way better with Shane Steichen than he had ever been. Anthony Richardson, same skill set-ish as Jalen Hurts, except even more physically gifted. So yes, I believe in Michael Pittman's upside here with Anthony Richardson and with Indianapolis' offense here. And Drake London, I believe it when I see it, man. I love Drake London, the player. I love him as a player. But I'm not forgetting this. And I don't think you should either. Drake London is getting a quarterback who is in his mid-30s, never was an athlete in Kirk Cousins. Never was an athlete before he tore his Achilles about midway through 2023. Why are we all just, why would we just assume that Kirk Cousins is going to be exactly who we remembered him as? I definitely don't believe that. So I have hesitations with Drake London. And especially at that price right now, we're trending in a direction where I can't trust Drake London enough to draft him in Underdog drafts right now. DJ Moore at 17 and Rashee Rice at 18. Now, DJ Moore is the wide receiver 14 on Underdog, and Rashee Rice, I think, is a good value. Wide receiver 26 on Underdog. So here's the thing about DJ Moore. Top 10 wide receiver last year, it had his finally breakout season in fantasy football. I love DJ Moore, the player. And I will probably be taking him in drafts this year because I know he has boom potential because he's an elite player. And I do believe that Caleb Williams will be successful-ish in Chicago. The problem is that this is a whole nother, it's the same thing DJ Moore's been dealing with his entire career. New quarterback every year, new coaching staff, new set of offense that he's got to learn, whether it's for the coach or the quarterback. DJ Moore is walking into an offense here that doesn't have their quarterback as of yet. I mean, they will in 2 weeks. But Caleb Williams, maybe he likes throwing to Keenan Allen better. He's a very, very, very good player and a veteran guy that knows how to get open. I like DJ Moore, like I said. I'll be drafting him, but I do have reservations about this one. And then Rashee Rice at 18 here. I love this value because, of course, we understand the news. He there was a warrant out for his arrest. He turned himself in. So that means he's probably going to get suspended this year. Probably 3 games, maybe 4 games. Something along those lines is what Rashee Rice is going to get. So to me, Rashee Rice drafting him at this late of value is going to be a good move to do. And again, take advantage of it on Underdog. Use code FFN to do it. Because I think Rashee Rice, what we need to remember here is that he is the wide receiver 1 as of right now in Kansas City. Best offense in football. Rashee Rice grew so much towards the end of his rookie season. So Rashee Rice getting a 1,100, 1,200 yard season, not out of the cards at all. Maybe not this year, but on a per game basis, I could easily see 14, 15 points per game from Rashee Rice in his second year. We just have to get past the suspension part, but again, take the shot on it today on Underdog while his value is low. Marvin Harrison Jr. lands at 19, and Jordan Addison is at 20. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr., I think he's just too overvalued right now. Wide receiver 9 on Underdog, and Jordan Addison, extremely undervalued. Wide receiver 39 on Underdog. 2 polar opposite ends of the spectrum right here. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is just in a situation where he's likely going to be the first wide receiver off the board, right? And I've seen Arizona, and I think if he does go to Arizona, he'll be a top 15 guy for me. But picking him at the wide receiver 9 on Underdog, we're expecting almost perfection from Marvin Harrison Jr. right away. It's a little too risky for me, and I'm a risk taker. I like taking risks. But the risk reward here, let's measure this out. There's been a couple top 3 guys in fantasy football that were rookie wide receivers of the last several years. Jamar Chase being one of them. Odell Beckham Jr. was a great player. Justin Jefferson was great. We're baking into his price that we're expecting perfection here. I don't think we should be doing that with Marvin Harrison because a lot of things can happen over the next several weeks here. And Jordan Addison, I don't get it. I understand the quarterback concerns again with Justin Jefferson, right? But Jordan Addison was a top 25 wide receiver already in fantasy. He's a big play guy. This guy is going to continue to develop in this offense. So get him a quarterback. This offense is already well run by Kevin O'Connell, and it's pass first. So I don't get this one. This is one of the best values on Underdog right now. Take advantage of it today. Deebo Samuel at 21 and Keenan Allen at 22. Now, Deebo's the wide receiver 16 on Underdog, and Keenan Allen's the wide receiver 27. So Deebo Samuel, it's just kind of the same thing, right? Like, for me, it's always the same story, where it's like, yes, I understand the upside is there. And specifically in a best ball league, like, taking him and having him get a 30-point game is fantastic because you don't have to worry about putting him in your starting lineup or not. That 30 points will be logged in a best ball format. But Deebo Samuel is still, in his late 20s, still with Brandon Ayuk, and it's not exactly a beacon of health, right? So Deebo Samuel, there's always, it's either one or the other. It's either he booms and has a great season or he busts. So I like Deebo, great offense, obviously, but unless he's getting carries, and I have a feeling they'll start slowing down as his career goes on, he becomes less valuable in fantasy to me. And then Keenan Allen, I contemplated putting him in my must-draft wide receivers video a couple of weeks ago, and I opted not to just because he is with a new team. There's uncertainty. But don't forget this. Look at the numbers on the screen of what he did last year. He was elite in fantasy football. He still finished as a top 10 guy, and he missed the last 4 games. So Keenan Allen is elite in fantasy. He's still an elite wide receiver. We know he can be elite. The question is, what do they do with him, right? And we don't know this. But Keenan Allen, we do know, is elite. And who knows? Caleb Williams might prefer to throw to Keenan Allen than he does to DJ Moore. I'm not willing to bank on it super heavily, but I do like the idea of drafting Keenan Allen right now in Underdog. Amari Cooper at 23 and Christian Kirk at 24. Now, Amari Cooper is the wide receiver 32 on Underdog, and Christian Kirk is the wide receiver 33. Both of them very undervalued in my opinion. Now, I get it. Amari Cooper, we've been kind of hearing all offseason like he's probably not going to be a Brown this year. Whether they trade him or whether they cut him post June 1st, We'll see what happens, right? The reality is, I really haven't heard much on that front. I've heard talks of maybe being traded, but I'm just kind of guessing here. Maybe a June 1st cut, but the reality is, if he is a Cleveland Brown, he is that number one. It's not Cedric Tillman. It's not Elijah Moore. And it's not Jerry Jeudy. Amari Cooper's the best one of the bunch. And we know in best ball, very valuable player because he just dropped a 50 bomb in last year's fantasy football playoffs. Amari Cooper could be elite still. And Christian Kirk, I think, is just in a situation where it's like without Calvin Ridley, I think people are just kind of forgetting him just because he didn't score as many touchdowns last year because Trevor Lawrence was off and he also got injured for the last several games. Christian Kirk is still a good player. He's still going to be a 8 target, 9 target per game type of guy in Jacksonville. They've got Gabe Davis, they've got Zay Jones, but Christian Kirk is that route runner who rounds all over the field and gets the targets along with Evan Ingram in this Jacksonville offense here. So I think as far as big plays go, maybe not the best big play guy, but as far as consistency goes, getting you 12, 13, 14, 15 fantasy points per game, Christian Kirk is a good option here. Jalen Waddle at 25 and Devonta Smith at 26. Now, Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith, they're both kind of a little overvalued to me. Waddle's the wide receiver 20 on Underdog, and Devonta's the wide receiver 23. Now, I can understand the upside, right? Like, I think both of them have very good upside. More upside than guys like Christian Kirk. Probably more upside than, you know, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Waddle does, I think. But Jalen Waddle, I think, is just in a situation where it's like, that second year he had, the first year with Tyreek Hill, he got so many touchdowns. Last year, the touchdowns didn't come, and he fell. He was a big disappointment last year in fantasy football. And I don't love Tua. I don't think that Tua is that great. But this Miami offense is going to continue to get Jalen Waddle opportunities, obviously. I like Jalen Waddle. I think I probably will draft him at least several times in my Underdog drafts. I'm probably going to do around 50 to 75 drafts, and Jalen Waddle will be one of my picks right here. But I just don't believe that his upside is really hinging on much else other than the touchdowns. That's the key right here. And Devonta Smith, same argument right now. It's like both these guys are getting like 5, 6, 7 targets per game at max. And there's a lot of games and a lot of stretches where they just disappear. That's my ultimate problem with guys like Devonta Smith. Because A.J. Brown hogs the targets, you know, for stretches of weeks. And so does Tyreek Hill. So that leaves these guys giving you 3 points on your bench in Underdog drafts and in redraft leagues. I would just rather take the shot on guys I know have a better chance of being a wide receiver 1 on their offense. Malik Neighbors at 27 and Calvin Ridley at 28. Malik Neighbors is the wide receiver 18 on Underdog, and Calvin Ridley is the wide receiver 37 on Underdog right now. So Malik Neighbors, I think, is just, it's the same argument with Marvin. It's like he's the new exciting toy. We all want to draft him, so his price is inflated right now. I think at some point I'll probably draft both of these guys, but I want to wait till their price cools off here, if it ever does. Malik Neighbors, I think it's just too early again. This guy could easily become a giant. He very easily could become a giant. Chargers, maybe he becomes a Charger, which would be elite, and I would be taking him. But again, I want to see where this guy lands, you know, before I go ahead and draft him at the wide receiver 18. Maybe you disagree. If you disagree, go draft him today. But I would rather take Calvin Ridley. The value on him, I think, is so much better than it was last year. And that's the irony. Last year, I was not a Calvin Ridley guy in fantasy. I was telling you guys to not draft him. This year, I feel so much differently. Calvin Ridley just signed a big contract with Tennessee. 5 years, $90 million. So you know they want to throw him the ball. They also just got a new coaching staff. Mike Vrabel, as much as I like him, defensive guy. They brought in a new offensive head coach. New offensive coaching staff. They're trying to make Will Levis, who has lots of physical gifts, by the way, they're trying to make him work by surrounding him with weapons. Tony Pollard, Tyjae Spears in the backfield, DeAndre Hopkins still there, Calvin Ridley looking like the wide receiver 1. I think if anything else, just take the shot on him today before his price rises, because I think as the offseason goes and we get closer to the time of fantasy football being a thing, people will start to pick up on this and say he's a good draft price at the prices he's at right now. George Pickens at 29 and Jaden Reed at 30, rounding it out. I think they're both pretty good values. George Pickens, wide receiver 31, and Jaden Reed, wide receiver 34 and Underdog. Pickens is the clear wide receiver 1 in Pittsburgh. Arthur Smith, I like the fit there. He made A.J. Brown do work when he was the offensive coordinator because I think he's a better OC than a head coach. The problem I ultimately have with Pickens is that he still has garbage quarterback play if they go with Russell Wilson, which they will likely start out by doing. So George Pickens, I think that his ceiling is still capped because Russell Wilson, maybe they switch to Justin Fields, which would be excellent. But I do think the upside is there with George Pickens, and it's a guy I've already taken in 3 underdog drafts right now. And Jayden Reed at number 30, I think he's the wide receiver 1 in Green Bay. I think Wicks, he's good, but I don't think he's the wide receiver 1. I think Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson, they're both just more role players, where Jayden Reed does so much with this offense. This guy was taking reverses. He was taking runs. He was going up the middle. He was going on the outside, short routes, deep routes. Jayden Reed is going to be the wide receiver 1 in Green Bay. And that offense, their stock is way up as well, just like the Houston Texans is. I like Jayden Reed in fantasy this year. Let me know what you think of the guys in this list in the comments below. And let me know who you're drafting a bunch of in fantasy football right now. And make sure you drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show your support.